vulnerable people should not be sacrificed for sake of economic recovery, which will potentially happen in opposition side paradigm. Well, opening opposition said that only the rich investor will receive the info, utilize it for sake of their profit, right? And that is a reason why we oppose, because we think that it's going to create a further economic crisis and also disparity between the people. So my extension is, so I'm going to focus on the characterization of investor and how their decision making is going to influence the economy in the long term. Two extensions. Number one, it causes further domino effect, which deteriorates the economy. And second, it creates poor, vulnerable people and receiving more harm. But before that, I have to make an inventor rebuttal. I have two things to talk about. Number one, the over-characterization came from opening opposition is that states can hide everything with its conspiracy or something, right? Like stock price and everything can be hidden, which totally inhibit the decision-making of investor. But if we think of the state's stance in the first place that we can see, we want to recover the economy, right? We want to withhold the info that negatively affect the economy itself. If the action of hiding itself is obviously harmful, then it's more reasonable to think that state will eventually open up the info in both of their paradigm. Yeah. Well, government there was a government assumption of conspiracy that government can hide every information and inhibit, but this is not really what we're talking about in this debate. What we're talking is which paradigm is simply more effective to have economic recovery and so forth. Second, well, opening opposition's core mechanism was this. The investor can spend more on domestic industry by revealing all information. But I strongly doubt the mechanism and rather think that it never happens. Because we know that investors are personal profit seekers, right? Oh, they kind of make a best choice to maximize the profit naturally. And this is the nature of it. So, if they know that some companies are obviously in a crisis, then what's their incentive to stay in the country? They would rather go to a foreign market like EU or US and never spend less and less money in the stock market, right? I don't think that revealing the info will directly lead to investors to spend more in the domestic market. So two things to talk about. Number one, the first extension is that investor revealing more info will cause a further domino effect and deteriorate the economy even more. I'd like to talk about that. Well, I'm going to focus on the actor, investor, because they make billions of investment on domestic industry, right? Well, what happens if banks are told to be falling into bankruptcy? Or what happens if the state is not, if you know that state has failed to receive the financial aid from foreign countries and so on? Well, let's say the bank is in a severe condition and they're about to fall in bankruptcy. What rather happens is that people will think, okay, that bank is in crisis now. Then other bank must have potential of being in a bankruptcy as well, right? All the investors are really conscious of their profit seeking, and that really makes them to retreat from the industry itself. If one company is in danger, then all the investors will retreat from the car industry itself because they think it is potentially dangerous, right? We think that this causes a domino effect, because if one company like Toyota is in a risk of bankruptcy, well, all the investors will retreat, and all the other vehicle companies will be in a financial problem as well, because all the investors are retreating and investment is no longer given in their paradigm, right? Well, it really creates a problem because all the other innocent industry companies which had been working well will also be influenced by revealing information, and it's going to make it more desperate to have a economic recovery. And second point, well, I'd also like to bring in another aspect about rich people and poor people. Well, the opening opposition's characterization was that only rich people extract the information, right? And only the rich investor have capability to avert the risk or extract the benefit from information that was given by the state. Well, what happens, speaking of this motion? Only rich people receive the information, and we rather think that there's going to be an asymmetry in the way in which information can benefit both actors. Because if we think of investors who have financial capability to control their stock, well, they tend to invest on beneficial business, right? And they hold many kind of financial asset in terms of stock and all that kind of stuff. What if state informed that, for example, like Toyota is in financial crisis or they're falling in bankruptcy, so we're going to help them? Then they can really correspond rapidly, right? They can retreat from the business, they can sell the stock, and they can avert the financial harm that they can potentially get in their paradigm. But obviously, those rich investors are not the majority of the society, right? There are many poor people who are working in a factory, who work in those kind of industry or a company, and which is more massive in terms of number. Well, they have no financial capability to spend the stock, right? Meaning that they have no financial capability to respond to the problem that government proposed in their paradigm. They're the actor who are only going to get hurt in their paradigm because there's going to be a domino effect that if our company is in danger, your company will also be in danger, right? Meaning that entire industry can receive harm, and if you're working in a factory, if you had been working in a factory, you had working in a company that supports the company that was, if you're working in a small company that supports a big company in financial crisis, you will also get unemployed because of the massive information and massive anxiety that was provided by the information. And we think that this is really harmful because poor people cannot take action but are going to be unemployed because of those kind of domino effects. I think we can justify our paradigm in terms of trade-off as well. Because what opposition side has been saying is that investor can avert risk and reduce its financial damage, right? I already doubted their mechanism saying that they have more incentive to spend on domestic market, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you are only going to spend in domestic market by revealing information. But we'd rather think that government side is better, because some investor can get hurt, but we have two things to talk about. Number one, investors should have already conceded to the potential risk that they have, right? Before the financial crisis, they know that it will come one day, they will know that one day they will lose their profit in the first place. And also, we'd rather think that poor people who do not invest, who cannot correspond to the information given by the government, can be saved more in our paradigm, right? Because we think that those kind of people should be prioritized in terms of number as well, and in terms of severity of the problem. Because they are vulnerable people who do not have financial capability, and the investors are people who do have financial capability and are still sustainable to have their life, although they fail in some kind of investment. And for those reasons, we are happy to propose.
I would first like to call up on the first speaker opposing the opposition. Here.
Mrs. Speaker, opening opposition mainly talk about why it's practically good for the economical recovery, but at the closing opposition, as an extension, we're gonna talk about even if it does those information that gives a negative effect to the economy, why we should not take this proposal, because we should not sacrifice the individuals, innocent individuals, just for the economic recovery, just for the majority of people. So, but before that, one rebuttal to the member of government. So he talked about poor people, because poor people are really pitied because they cannot utilize their money. But firstly, I cannot understand why those poor people are saved in their paradigm, because in their paradigm they are still poor and they cannot still invest into the economy, right? But secondly, we say that our paradigm is rather good for those poor people, because in their paradigm they have a slower recovery from the economic crisis, and actually we can achieve the more quicker recovery from the economy. So actually our paradigm is rather good for those poor people. So move on to my argument. So, today I have three arguments. Firstly, why in our paradigm will lead to a better economic recovery, but because we still believe that our paradigm rather achieve the economical recovery. And secondly, this is our unique extension. Why it's legitimate to why it's illegitimate to hide the information in this situation. Sorry, I have two arguments. So moving to my first argument. So why in our paradigm we can actually lead a more better economic recovery. So for analysis, firstly, because those investors get the information, right? So it's meaning that investors feel rather unease and cannot calculate how to invest their money. So in this situation, because for investors it's too risky to invest some places, right? Because there is no information from the government, how much the company is doing well or how much the company doing bad. So we say that fewer investigation occur in their paradigm. So secondly, it leads to lack of investigation, and it actually leads to because in economic crisis, company has less resources are really lacking and monies are really lacking, right? So in such situation, if fewer people will invest in the paradigm, we cannot company cannot do anything. So in that situation, investigation is really important because lacking of resources or lacking of money. So their policy is actually damaging and also. And thirdly, we say that if those people invest, maybe the places, maybe those investors will only invest the places or only invest the companies which are maybe strong or which are really big or less likely to be bankrupt, In those situations, less competition or weaker competition will happen in their paradigm. So it actually leads to it actually leads to slower economic recovery from economic recession. So that is actually harmful. Okay.
What we are talking is the government information like GDP or unemployment rate. If investors, the company's information is so necessary, they themselves can research. And why government should negatively information revealing is necessary?
Because government information does matter to those investors because of government investigation, government information to how much the carrots how much actually those investments are cost. Those information are only governments are seizing right now. So this is my response to your POI. So lastly, because this leads to actually less investigation from the abroad, right? So meaning because foreign investors don't want to have no necessity to choose a country which actually hide the information about their economic crisis. So it's actually risky for those foreign investors and because foreign investigation is actually important because in the in domestic and in the economic crisis, domestic information is actually lacking in the situation of the economic crisis. So in their paradigm, it's actually damaging to the economic recovery. So that's why in our paradigm, we can actually lead a more better solution for the economic crisis. So moving to my unique extension, why it's illegitimate to hide the information. So Mr. Speaker, when the actually government can legitimate to withhold the information, we say that it's a situation of really and we went to actually open the information to the public. We say that it's actually related to the individuals, related to the daily life of individuals. So as an opening government says that we can hide the information when information about the diplomacy or military information, right? We concede that we can hide those kind of information, right? But we oppose because those economic crisis or information about the economic situation is actually necessary for the individuals to choose what to consume or choose what to make living on the ground. So it's completely different from the diplomacy or the military information because we don't take any choice based on the diplomacy or based on military information, right? So it's actually we should not hide the information. We should not use sacrifice individuals randomly choose from the citizens and then so sacrifice the individual. We should not do those kind of things as a government. For those reasons, we have to oppose.
I thank for your speech and like to call upon government with.
I'm going to answer 2 questions in my speech. Number 1, how the investors act by taking this notion, which was mainly talked about from the opposition side, and directly engaging to it. And second of all, how the investors and people's mindsets is really important to get out the economic crisis, which is actually the core issue in this debate. All my rebuttal will be included, but for that, one rebuttal to the previous speaker. At the end of the speech, she said about the justification and how, even if it is bad for the economy, we cannot actually sacrifice the people and deprive people's choice, so on and so forth. Well, the criteria she gave us to actually justify her case was that because it is related to the life of the individual. Yeah, that is actually why we need to actually take this plan, because solving the economy is hugely related to the individuals. When there's no jobs or no money inside the market, it directly affects the people in the ground, and therefore we think it is justifiable. But moreover, we think people can even if it is depriving some of the choices of the individual, we think it is still justifying. When government can take a preemptive method. For example, government actually force people to take the pension system. Maybe it might be depriving people's choice to making what kind of lifestyle they want to have, and in order to make their living. But still, the government thinks that the possibility of people corrupting their life is still more higher, and therefore they take this kind of situation. And therefore, we think that government assuming that it is bad for the people, and therefore taking and depriving people's right, it still can be justified. So first, to my first question about the investors, because what mainly the opposition side has mentioned is that first of all that the investors doesn't know what kind of company they should invest, and therefore it's going to be bad. Well, number one, we don't think that we're going to hide all of the information that exists in the stock market. We don't think we're not going to ban all of the stock rates or what kind of money that company gets, so for and so forth. We're only going to restrict the really important information. For example, this company has the possibility of corrupting, or the government might have the possibility of not receiving lending money from the EU, or from the other banks. These banks has the possibility of corrupting. We think that kind of really huge information that has a huge possibility of influencing to the economy is what we are talking about. So we don't think the investors suddenly having no idea where to invest is actually really unrealistic in the first place. But second of all, and moreover, they said on one hand, they said that they don't know what kind of place they should invest, and then on the other hand, they're going to invest in the really good places. So I think the character of the investor they are saying is not really considered in the first place. But second of all, even if they don't have a lot of information, still we think they know what kind of area has a really huge possibility of gaining more money than other areas. For example, IT or also so on and so forth. They can generally consider what kind of invest they should make, and therefore even if they have no idea of where to invest, we think still investors can make rational decisions. But moreover, when we consider the nature of the investor, we think the investor has the possibility of taking high risk because comparing because we think some kind of the investors, since they have a lot of money, they have the capacity of investing to a more higher risky places that has the more possibility of corruption, but maybe has more benefit at the future. And we think this kind of nature of taking high risk is the nature of the investor, and therefore we think even if that kind of situations occur, still a lot of investors still try to invest in the process. Yes.
Okay. Don't you think if investors keep investing failing company due to the fact that the government hides the current inflation, the successful investments cannot be made, and that will be hindered on their product?
Well, we think comparing comparing the situation, our paradigm is much more better, because what we see they're saying is that they might be continuously investing to the failing companies. But in our side, what they're doing is that what they're saying is that they're going to obviously show that this kind of area is not going to success, and therefore the investors are obviously not going to invest monies in that place. And therefore we think the amount, even if they don't actually, they're continuing to invest in the failing places, we think still a lot of money will go to the market. And therefore compared to our side, compared to their side, where the money doesn't go to the market, we think our side is much better, considering that the invest will still be much better in our paradigm. And that is where my partner's extension actually comes in, because what he has said is that considering that taking this motion only benefits the investors who can recover from the risk, but also they didn't actually show us why they can get out from the economic crisis at the end of the day, and therefore we think still the investors might take the chance of not having a huge burden, but at the end of the day, still the poor people cannot get out from the economic crisis, still having a huge burden, and we think this is actually not good. But second of all, we think that the people's expectation to the economy is a huge criteria where we want to go out from the economic crisis. Why is that so? Because economic crisis can be opt out when we first come from creating expectation that the economy might good. Like when people think that the economy might go well, then that is when the investors start to go to investing instead of having money in their pockets, and then go into giving companies money. And therefore the companies can start investing in creating more products, having more hiring jobs. Moreover, when people see the expectation that the economy might go good, that is when people started consuming goods, consuming luxury things. And after people have this expectation, actually have this consuming acts, that is when actually the economy really goes good. So we think that the economy actually, going out from the economy starts from people's expectation that the economy really goes good. And that is what the government tries to actually create from the first place. Like government tries to create more that is why Abe tried to say that Abenomics, we're doing everything to recover the economy, not just because he's trying to say the economy is really good, but he's trying to have a hard stance that we're doing a really good job in the economy, we're doing very good, so therefore you must invest to us. And that is why he actually did a really good job in hiring the rate of the stock market, because the people's expectations were good. And we think in our side, the government is actually, since in the situation of economic crisis, the government is doing a lot of jobs, like having more investing, like lowering the interest rates of and of lending money, or like having more money inside the market. A lot of things to offer the expectation. And what the problem we see here is that when the people see this information, suddenly the expectation that the economy will go good, it will suddenly go down. And never that the vicious cycle that the people will start consuming will never start at the first place. And that is what my partner clearly extended. Because when the people will see that expectation just from one information, they extend to the idea that all of the economy will not go good, which will go to the domino effect. And we believe that in this situation, the only way we can go out from the economic crisis is to have the expectation that the economy will go good, and therefore we think we need to hide information.
I thank for the speech and like to call upon the opposition with to conclude the case.
Ladies and gentlemen, no one on side proposition really answered this question. Is the economic crisis going to be really better off on their side of the house? On the other hand, we on opposition side successfully told you how their policy erodes or exacerbates the economic crisis and how that infringes individual economic activities, and that leads to further economic crisis. And for all those reasons, we're extremely happy to oppose. I'm going to look at three issues in this debate. First of all, the idea of economic crisis. Second of all, about individual activity, and lastly about information control.
first point about economic crisis. The idea coming from opening government is heavily rested on the idea that less purchase is what is causing economic crisis. In response to this point, Owo talked about how people are going to continue to purchase anyways, just because our state reveals negative information, saying that that is based upon budget. What we told you though from closing opposition is we doubted this causal linkage or the effective policy. We told you how the moment when state starts to withhold information means that countries as a whole is in economic crisis. So individuals, even on their side of the house, just because state withhold information, that doesn't necessarily make people think that we're in a good situation. People can know that we're in economic crisis just by states withholding information. So the idea that people are going to change when state withhold information, that's not going to happen. But more than that, we also talked about how these individual levels of marginal increase in purchase will not lead to getting out of economic crisis. No one ever dealt this point. They stick to this idea of getting out of economic crisis because people are going to purchase more. That is just ludicrous. And what Shio told you is how poor people are going to be sacrificed. What we told you firstly is that the example coming from their side of the house is only Toyota. What we say to that is that is really extremely minor case, and if that is going to be a serious problem, and probably state will do something to ensure the existence of Toyota. But more than that, if there is a structural problem to the extent that that is so huge as Toyota, and probably it's possible that Toyota should go bankruptcy. So the point on their side of the house is not actually dealing with the point whether or not they're going to get out of economic crisis. Second, what we told you is that let's look at the idea of investors. What we told you from closing opposition is that investment are going to stop when state withhold information. Because the idea that the moment when you start to invest is because you have trust or you have transparency to the possible investment. Who would invest in companies or countries that withhold information does not review information? I don't think what happens is that investors are going to stop investing into those countries or companies because they know that the state is not going to review negative information, and that when investors know that they cannot get negative information, they will probably not going to invest to begin with. So the loss of those investment is extremely important because the economic crisis is not just caused by individual purchase. It is the huge amount of economic crisis is because of those investment. Investment matters much more than individual purchases. So they need to deal with this point. And also, let's deal with the point of information that they talked. OG talked about, private entities can research and know the information. If that is the case, how does their benefit are going to be materialized on their side of the house? If individuals, companies can know the information, know benefits on their side of the house, they made a huge suicide. Sit down. But more than that, CEO's idea is positive information are going to lead to better expectation, and that might lead to a better economic situation. And the problem is that just because citizens don't get negative information, that doesn't make citizens think that we're going to get to the positive, better economic situation. People are not that stupid. Just because citizens don't know negative aspects, that doesn't make them think that we're in a good situation. But they also raised the example of Abenomics. The problem on that side of the house is the Japanese economy is not actually going well. The problem is that Abe instilled this idea that we might be able to get in a good situation. The reality is that Japanese economy is going down and down and down. That's a big failure on their side of the house. Next, let's look at the idea of individual activity. Because CG mainly talked about how poor people are going to be worse off on our side of the house. The main problem is that poor people's activity is not really related to economic or getting out of the economic crisis. Just because poor people make some change their activities, that doesn't change economic as a whole at all. No thank you later. And what we told you is that the private investors who are rich, who are capable of changing the situation, and the problem is that when investors know that they're going to lose a lot of money because they cannot invest, they don't know the like outcome of investment, they're probably going to withdraw or at least shift the investment to another country or other industries. The problem is that they're going to sacrifice those activities. Yes.
People already know situations, found customer in their own situation. Why government should additionally threaten people, obstructing individuals focusing on a positive aspect of economy?
I don't think state is threatening the life of individuals to begin with, but more than that, those information are information necessary for people to make better decisions. I believe. So the problem is that they are based upon this false equation of future effects. Just because withholding information does not change the economy. What happens is that individuals are going to lose a lot of money because of what I told you. Last of all, let's look at this right to know. What OG talked about is that we withhold information in terms of military. What we told you though from Kai is that we draw the line on whether or not it concerns your daily life or not. When that concerns your daily activity, government has no right to restrict that. The response from Nanami was that but when we compare the getting out of economic crisis, we might be able to sacrifice those the right to know. The problem is that